One of the most challenging things about playing the saxophone is controlling the lower register. If you can consider the shape of the saxophone, you'll notice that it's in its simplest form, it's narrow at the top and it flares rather significantly as you make your way down to the bottom of the bell. The saxophone is a large cone. Essentially, it's a conical bored instrument. In addition to the basic shape of the instrument, the tone holes at the top of the instrument are smaller than the ones at the bottom. Now, what I just explained is likely fairly obvious information to you, but I find that the saxophone is a challenging instrument to control because of its dramatic conical flare. The pitches that are largely associated with the top of the tube can have a tendency to sound thin while sounding very heavy at the bottom. The lower notes of the saxophone many times tend to respond late and carry a heavy articulation and a harsh sound. This can be prevalent especially in younger players. But this, however, doesn't have to be the case if we just consider how the instrument operates. As we mentioned before, the saxophone is a conical bored instrument. As one blows into the instrument, most of the air will escape out of the first open tone hole. And as we close tone holes, we're making the tube longer. So the lowest pitches on the instrument require air to travel the greatest distance before escaping out of that first open tone hole. With that said, if air is not moving fast enough when we begin to blow through the mouthpiece, there will be a delay in the production of the sound. Usually, from what I've encountered, players can intuitively compensate for these delays by either playing louder, dropping their jaw, or by articulating harder. These are not the best practices, of course, as articulation should not be used to jumpstart the low register. The saxophone doesn't require articulation for a sound to be produced. To make a sound on the instrument, we only need two things. It requires air, and it requires pressure for the reed to vibrate. Now, I practice trying to keep the pressure relatively stable across the entire range of the horn. So that leaves me to focus solely on my air to control the lower register. So to practice controlling the low end of the horn, I create exercises that strip things down only to the essential elements I need to produce a sound: air and pressure. In other words, I practice playing the low notes without articulating. If I can do this consistently, the idea is that there will be less of a need to use my articulation to assist the note coming out. Instead, the articulation will be able to serve its primary purpose, which is adding clarity and style to the front of the note. So just remember, proper air and pressure will help the note to respond. Articulation deals with clarity and style. So let's try not to require the articulation to serve in what the air should be doing. So here's a quick exercise to consider. Start on a relatively simple pitch, say a low F. Play a series of quarter notes separated by quarter rests. Now play all of these notes without articulating with your tongue. Simply just use your air. Listen very closely to the front of your note and try to eliminate any air sounds as you may hear before the pitch comes out. If you hear air before the note, that either means your air's not moving quick enough to reach that last open tone hole, or you don't have enough pressure on the reed. Most people, I find, relax the embouchure when playing low notes. And it's important to understand that this creates less pressure, which creates a great delay in response. And more than likely, you won't produce that ideal sound that you're looking for. So try to fight the urge to reduce your jaw pressure in the low register. Now repeat the series down a half step until you reach the low B flat, and monitor what you need to do with your air and the intensity as you increase the length of the tube. And once you get the hang of this, and it may take some time, alternate no articulation with an articulated pitch. Note that since you can produce the notes effectively with no tongue, now you don't need such a heavy articulation. You don't need such a heavy tongue to produce a note in the low register. So just use a light enough articulation to provide a moment of clarity to the front of the pitch. I would like to also mention that to have the best success in the lower range of the horn, or any part of the saxophone for that matter, it's important that your saxophone is in stellar condition and that your mouthpiece and your reeds virtually have no flaws. Of course, there are other things to consider, like maintaining proper voicing. So for some basic voicing principles, you can watch my tutorial that I've linked in the description below. Paying special attention to my air has played a major role in my ability to play the saxophone with a higher level of consistency, especially in the bottom range of the horn. All it takes is a careful ear and deliberate practice to improve in these areas. If you would like to use the exercises that I outlined in this video, you can visit foundationsaxophoneacademy.com for a downloadable PDF. And as always, for more helpful tips and performance videos, consider subscribing to this channel. This way you can get some immediate updates as I upload new video content to help you become the best musician you possibly can be.